guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Let's Tech About It, and that's exactly what I, Ayush Alavadi, and Aman Shet, all the way from LA, are going to be doing. This time, our nerd hats, our geek alert, whatever you want to call it, all those sirens and lenses will be on because Aman, we've discussed hardware, we've discussed software, we've discussed the biggest companies and their marketing strategies and where their brands are going wrong, the things we like, the things we don't, what the future of wearables is. But there's one important element of technology in the 21st century which we need to discuss, and that is privacy, don't you think?
Absolutely, Ayush. It is such an important and critical topic today, and it's something that all of us as users are always concerned about as to what can these apps steal from us, or at least what are they take? What are they accessing of our phones? We always have that concern. What is Siri listening to? Or if you have a Google Home or Alexa at home, what are they listening to? Are they always listening? And it's a big topic of discussion among not just tech geeks, but I think even normal consumers who are not sure as to how to react to some of these things. And I've seen a big trend in the recent few years about on third party search engines and different things like that that are sort of saying, or their ad campaign is basically saying that we will not do what Google does or we will not do what Apple does in terms of data sharing and data selling. So it's a very important topic, and obviously with Apple's latest software update to their smartphones and iPadOS with the release of iOS 14.5, there is a new feature which allows users to choose whether they want to let the app continue to track or say no. And that is basically Apple giving us the power. So Ayush, why don't you do a little bit of, put your Sherlock Holmes hat on and just explain to us what exactly is happening, or what used to happen and how is that going to change?
So obviously, Aman, a while ago when Apple put up this YouTube video, and obviously people were talking about this for a while, that 14.5 is going to be a game changer when it comes to privacy. And we know Apple has valued privacy for a while, but when we talk about this new app tracking transparency feature, it's important to remember, right, Aman, what this feature will do is give users the chance to opt in, right? So when we think about privacy, it's always been this sort of an opt-out approach. Now it sort of gives users the choice, like you said. So what we do here is, if you turn this on in your privacy settings on your iPhone after you've updated it to 14.5, and please back up your data before you do, because it's a new update, it's a monumental update. Basically, it's going to request users for their permission before allowing any app or any other service on that iPhone or Apple device to collect their IDFA tag. Now, what is that IDFA tag? Because that's a crucial question. iPhones, in simple language for everyone tuned in, use the identifier for advertisers, or IDFA tag. It's this unique sort of identifier, Aman, which basically works with cookies and tracking pixels to create this sort of a virtual database of each user. What that means in simple English is, if you basically log in to, if you run a Google search on perhaps the best microphones for a podcast and the best software for a podcast, the next time, obviously that's been registered on your device with a particular unique ID which is unique to your device. After you move in to perhaps say Instagram, or you move to Facebook, then Facebook, we've all experienced this at some point, right? Will suddenly come up with a pop-up, or will try to sell you a service as an advertisement, which will essentially talk about, the things that you had searched for. Or sometimes, like you said, you're scared about your Amazon Alexa and stuff like that. It's also things that you've uttered to it as some command, maybe saying, add soy milk to my grocery list. And when that's added in, you don't know how your IDFA tags at the back and how other cookies and tracking, mechanisms are working in the back end. Hence, you get this going. This is a database that is created, and it's actually used specifically to target ads at you and actually to determine the ads effectiveness. We did an episode, a couple of weeks ago, about how Google has gotten it all wrong with their hardware, but What Google essentially is as a tech company is not a software or a hardware company. It is an advertising company in the 21st century. So it but naturally flows from it, Raman, that if Apple has done something like this and come up with a feature like this on 14.5, they are moving to the next level when it comes to privacy. And who do you think, this is a $1 million question to you, who do you think will be most pissed off with this move? Tell me two companies that are pissed off and why.
Facebook and Google.
Exactly.
But as we've seen this happen in the past, when Apple does something, the world watches. And then what does the world do? They put their spin on it, but essentially do the exact same thing. And I'm not saying Google or Facebook are going to do the exact same thing because they're different companies. But today, Google does not take a stand whether they're for their current business model of ads, or if they're going to move towards, what Apple is suggesting, that not allowing cross sharing of data across apps. So we'll see very soon when Google, probably launches their next phone along with their next major software update, what is their stand on this very sort of delicate topic, let me say. And Facebook has come out with quite a heavy hand in criticizing what Apple is doing. But obviously, at the end of the day, Facebook needs Apple, so they sort of mellowed down, I would say, over the last maybe week or two, and they're sort of, I guess, imagining a future as to what this is going to do. And maybe this is a time where we can talk about that a little bit. And so, as Ayush very, very eloquently put it out there and made it very simple for us to understand what exactly is happening, where the information is sort of shared across apps. But what this new thing is, what the new iOS 14.5 is going to do is, from now on, if I open Facebook and I search for something within Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is allowed to track that information because it's within their service. It's within what Facebook is offering. But if I search something on Google on my Chrome browser on my phone, and now with my new with the new software update, and I've said no for app tracking, that information is not going to be shared to Facebook. So now Facebook is not going to know what I searched for on my Google Chrome browser, and not show and so they're not going to be able to show me ads of that product.
That's
But what's
because
going
you.
to
That's because
happen,
you. That's because you'll opt out.
because I've opted out, and I think the general consensus is that most people are going to opt out. I think there's enough criticism, there's enough people talking about this that I think it's almost a
You're right.
given. And I think Greg Federighi, I think he's number two at Apple, right? There's
Absolutely.
also talks about when Tim Cook leaves, he's going to be the next CEO. Although he rubbishes it out on a very interesting Wall Street Journal video. But he says is that if you opt out from this from your settings app, Apple by default will not allow tracking. So if you don't want to be constantly, questioned or constantly have that pop-up show up the first time you open the app
Yeah.
on iOS 14.5, you can just go into the settings, say no, or turn it off, and basically that means you're saying no. I don't know how true that is because, if you want to take Apple's word, you will. I like to be naive at those times, and I'll say I think Apple won't do wrong by you since they've anyways gone into
No,
this direction.
you're right. You're right, Aman. But the thing with that is that he also concedes, I think, in that same very interview, that there are other ways in which apps do track you, and
Hmm.
there are very innovative ways in which, I mean, I believe that some apps are using device identification. So they look at your browsing device, the operating system, the version of your web browser, and the IP address. So there will be things that you'll sign up for. Let's see how Android does this. On my OnePlus phone, each and every app that I open asks me two or three things. It says, okay, we want permission to use your. You can do this in the permissions tab originally on iOS as well, but this is each time I get a prompt, and I love it because I've always said allow once, right? Deny permanently. There are very strict things out there, but the truth is, like you said, which side of this battle is Google on? I'll tell you why. Because as that big tech company, as that big ad agency, sorry, not ad agency, well, an ad generating, well, powerhouse, so to speak. I want to put some numbers in over there in terms of what this means in terms of revenue, right? I have this CNBC piece opened over
Yeah.
here. Hear this: the feature will significantly dent the advertising efficiency of Apple, of Google, and Facebook. So this will really impact Google and Facebook. There's one move by Apple.
Yep.
If 80% of all iOS users, which is the pegged number when they've gone by their
Hmm.
sort of Vox Pop study, 80% of us on iOS are going to utilize this privacy tool, and we really value our privacy, hence we have iPhones. That's what Apple thinks, and that's what the study is. If 80% of iOS users let refuse to let apps collect their IDFA information, that tag that Aman and I spoke about, Google stands to lose, wait for it, an estimated $18 billion in the next 12 months alone. Facebook, which is also a company which is really out there when it comes to its ads game, or try to run an ad or a campaign on Instagram, they've jacked up the rates throughout the year, I've noticed. Every time you're trying to run a promotion, $8 billion is what they would stand to lose in the same period. And this is essentially, I'm guessing, because of Facebook and more importantly, Instagram, because I think Instagram promotions are really important to them as well. And Apple users who actually pay for this stuff constitute a huge proportion of their user base. So this new feature, 14.5, will not allow Google to use its ad related services on many of its platforms. There becomes a double whammy or triple whammy if there's something like that, because there's YouTube, Chrome, Maps, and more. There's one more bomb I want to drop for you there, Aman. If you thought about it, this is the same Apple who says we value privacy. This is the same Apple who's saying, we're going to make this tank armor of a phone which is impenetrable to hackers. But you know what they're also doing? They're also saying, we want to set up our own search engine. So bye bye Google. It basically creates an ecosystem which is not the ecosystem that we talk about your iPhone and your iPad. This is an ecosystem in terms of a sort of closed garden approach where you're within this paywall and you're getting these great services of the Apple bouquet of services, and then they're knocking every third party out. And this is an Apple who's quite ballsy, Aman, because this is, well, multi-billion dollar, trillions of dollars,
Trillion
which
dollar.
back them, which actually tells you that this is an Apple which is willing to fight Epic in a lawsuit and and fight with Fortnite when they try to sell you things within the game and don't give them their commission. So everyone is pissed off with them, right? But Apple sort of has taken a stand, and I really think that this was the need of the hour. But how do you think Google and Facebook and these guys are really going to innovate? How are they going to be compelled to innovate? Because look, this is a lot of money that you're losing overnight because of one
Yeah.
one
Hmm.
well swing of the axe by Apple, right? So you think they'll be
Yeah.
huddling? What is that Google and Facebook boardroom looking like right now, according to you?
It's when it comes to that Apple search engine, I have to quickly put it in there. If they do it the same way they did Apple Maps, I don't think Google has too much to worry about, because we all know Apple Maps is the biggest fail of anything Apple has ever done. It's the one thing I will say that they got it blatantly wrong.
Right.
But anyways, maybe Apple will learn from that and do something better. But Google, as we said, that they're right now, it's almost like everyone is waiting for them to sort of take a stand, right? Because they're the biggest company after Apple in terms of a tech company or in terms of a software company, because they're the makers of Android, which is the most popular phone operating system in the world. So it's going to be interesting as to see how Google comes out of this. But I think what's going to happen in terms of Facebook, and I think Facebook, as we all know, it's evolving, right? From being just a social media platform to where people posted about, I am going to the gym, or hanging out with friends. I remember in 2000, what was it, 9 or 2008,
Right.
when we started using Facebook. That's what we sort of did, right? It was just like, oh, and also we played a lot of those online games with friends because that
That's
was
true.
something they offered at the time. But now it's so much more, right? It's a marketing tool. It's almost like a website for certain companies. people are using Facebook in different ways. So Facebook's evolved. You get news, you have videos, you have almost everything out there. So I think what's going to happen is Facebook's going to become this, I don't know what to even call it, like almost like an all-in-one sort of app where you can search for things. It could be a search engine, it could be a online shop, online departmental store. It could be everything. So what I think will happen is that now when I start search, instead of going into Google and searching for something, people are going to, at least the ones who like Facebook, are going to open up the Facebook app and start searching within Facebook, because
Yeah.
Facebook Marketplace has become pretty big. A lot of people use it quite actively, at least here in the US. Um, it's probably more popular than the previous sort of used shopping experience which Craigslist was, apart along with all of the other not so great things that Craigslist used to do. But anyways,
Yeah.
coming back to Facebook, so now it's going to be where if I start searching for things within Facebook and I start shopping within Facebook, today when I click on an ad in Facebook, many times Facebook will then I will jump into a third app or a second app, which is basically a link. That ad is a link to that other app or the other
Yeah.
browser, or opens up my browser. But what's going to happen? It's now all going to be inbuilt into Facebook. If I click an ad in Facebook, it's going to open up inside of Facebook sort of software or Facebook's
Correct.
app. And if I'm
Correct.
shopping, I get to shop within that app. It's going to
That's been
that's
happening.
what the transition is going to be.
No, that's interesting that you envision something like that. But let's also put a couple of things into context. Since you mentioned Instagram and Facebook, and those are Zuckerberg products, Mark Zuckerberg and team actually did do a press conference, or well, a release a couple of days ago, where they spoke about how
Yes.
Instagram is changing, how creators will be monetized, how it'll become more of a marketplace. The swipe ups will be a lot more. We have an app out here in India called Trell, which they're trying to build a community, which I find interesting, but I don't know if they've got that sort of implementation yet. But I feel like the idea is similar, because now you have to work around some sort of a commission. If Aman wants to buy that deodorant, and he wants to buy a particular shirt that his favorite influencer is wearing, and he clicks on it, he doesn't have to go to Amazon or to Zara to pick it up. Well, he can pick it up from the Facebook marketplace, and I'm sure that they'll charge some sort of a commission, or there's some sort of smart planning out there, or that means a lot more screen time, and that app becomes more sticky. What's interesting is this tweet that I saw, Aman, from this guy named
Hmm.
Ashkan Sultani, right? And I think The Verge quoted it
Yes.
as well. And this
Hmm.
is the backlash that you're talking about, because you're not dealing with some small fish. You're dealing with, if Apple is
Yeah.
the whale, you're dealing with sharks. And in this case, the sharks are Facebook, Instagram, and the sort of updates that he's talking about are them using additional scare tactics to combat Apple's iOS 14.5 privacy changes. And the best way to explain it, and I want to put this out on the screen, but I'm also going to read it out, is help keep Facebook free of charge. The kind of prompts you're getting are essentially the same on both apps. Your own version, iOS 14.x or 14.5, this version of iOS requires us to ask for permission to track some data from the device to improve your ads. We use information about your activity received from other apps and websites to, one, show you ads that are more personalized. So the first thing they want to do is, well, we just want to show you personalized ads. Okay, that's fine. Another thing is support businesses that rely on ads to reach their customers. And then the important bit, help keep Facebook free of charge. Are they threatening us that they're going to start charging us for Facebook and Instagram because
Yes.
Apple is messing around with them with a privacy update? Well, this is the threat. I think there's a lot of lawsuits that usually follow when things like this happen. There also, one more thing to put in context in terms of a news piece. We know exactly how Google and Facebook and Microsoft have been going through so many Senate hearings and congressional hearings and whatnot in terms of privacy, discussions that they're having in the US. And that's just the US. The Indian government asks them questions all the time. The European regulators ask them to comply with GDPR. Then there are issues about how they're abusing dominance in other countries. Man, I really think, Aman, I should get back to being a lawyer or a policy guy rather than making content, because there's an endless barrage
Hmm.
of actions that I can help out with, because I think it's kind of interesting, because if this is what's happening, and he says that this is the sort of threat that these guys are coming up with, then we've seen how Facebook's been an open critic of what's happening with 14.5, but it's kind of interesting that the keep Facebook Instagram free tactic in this article on The Verge seems to run counter to Facebook's long standing tagline, which indicated the company
Exactly.
was free and always will be. And it's connecting people and the billions that it wants to connect. Of course, Facebook removed that slogan quietly from its homepage in 2019. I'm guessing that was a tough boardroom meeting to be at. And CEO Mark Zuckerberg didn't rule out a paid version of Facebook when he testified before Congress in 2018. There will always be a version of Facebook that is free. I'm guessing the lawyers weighed in on that conversation and the boardroom really switched gears.
Right.
It's a crazy
But
time
I
to
want
be
to,
alive.
yeah, I want to put a question out there. How many of you or how many users would actually pay for Facebook? I want you guys who tune in so nicely and listen to us talk about tech every week. Let us know. Would you use Facebook if it was free? Would if it was not free, if you had to pay for it? Would you use Instagram if you had to pay for it? We want to understand where do you guys stand because I think this is big. I don't know if it's just a threat to get Apple to push back or are they seriously going to do this because I would imagine or like I'm thinking here today if I was posed that question maybe I'd use the free version of it, but I don't think I would pay for Facebook or Instagram. I mean, I understand that there are a lot of people who are, or a lot of businesses that are very dependent on these sort of social media platforms. And I don't even think we can even call these social media platforms anymore, right? It's just platforms for everything today. So maybe um, a user group that would pay for it. But do you think the average user who is not a content creator, is not a business owner, but is literally using Facebook and Instagram as social media platforms to be connected to people in different parts of the world, would they pay for it? That's the big
Interesting.
question here.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and what does a paid version entail? What does a free version
Mhm.
entail? Does it mean you have to watch ads? Because there's so many editing apps and stuff that I use on my phones. If you pay,
Right,
a bit to get the premium version, then you don't have to see an ad. But I can get almost all the features by just watching 5 seconds of an ad. And frankly, I don't pay for YouTube Premium, and I pretty much watch YouTube ads all the time. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it means a slightly, well, not so clean, a little bloated version of what we used all this while and
right.
what we enjoyed. But I don't know. I mean, that could also cost them dear, I would imagine, from their entire user base and also from a revenue perspective.
Right. I want to also put another question out there, right? Apple has always been sort of the they generally are the first ones to do major things like this. I think we've established that over the years as well. Um, and obviously, Apple's tagline or slogan out here is they're giving the power back to us.
Correct.
And that's all well and good. It's great marketing, which we have made very evident that Apple is the absolute best at marketing. But is there something else actually going out there? Is it Apple trying to basically not necessarily beat the competition, but because I don't even know if Facebook is Apple's competitor, but more so like they're saying like at the end of the day we want is it Apple trying to gain more power? That's the question I have. I know they're putting it out there to us saying that the power is back to you, but is it also or is the have they just completely twisted what they wanted to actually do, which is gain more power and just say, oh, we're giving the power back to you, but in
Yeah.
reality it's like we're just getting more powerful and you guys are not going to know about that.
Well,
That's the
that's
question
why.
in my mind.
Well, that's why they're one of the biggest companies, not just tech companies, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they will be for years to come. But there's an interesting point to that, right? Is Google, who are, well, no, they're not so naive. I mean, yeah, we did talk about how they got a lot of their hardware launches wrong, but well, they're still a massive company who do some fantastic things when it comes to software. And Google is not just taking this lying down. Yes, of course, they're contesting this with Facebook and the others, and they're stating their reservations about such a move. But they're also working on something. You need to realize that 80% or more of the world is on Android based devices. So, what are they doing to compete with this? Obviously, like Aman said, it's a sort of a dilemma for them. And mind you, Apple's Apple's dig in that YouTube video, you guys should go and find it, which has over 1 million views, introducing this feature seemed like, well, a trailer for Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary, talking about exactly all these problems that we discussed. And it's funny because they're part of the problem, Apple, but this is their way, like Aman is saying, of saying, oh, this is our way of giving back to you. This is our way of giving you the power back. But you're right. I mean, they're pretty much a part of the problem entirely, right? So also, they claim that their apps, at least for now, Apple-based apps, do not track or use any of your data. But look, man, we've seen how Mark Zuckerberg changed his course within a few months. We've seen how Google has changed their strategy. We've seen how though Apple is a little more stoic usually when it comes to it, they still don't accept that Face ID is a complete flop in terms of the pandemic. They come up with these small features and they don't give us Touch ID ever again because they don't want to renege on the fact that they said Face ID is superior to Touch ID. That's a topic for another day. But Google, in this piece by Mark Gurman on Bloomberg.com, is exploring an alternative to Apple's ATT or anti-tracking feature. And this really talks about how the internet industry and the tech world is slowly embracing user privacy. Finally, 2021, guys. According to people with knowledge of the matter, internally, the search giant is discussing how it can limit data collection and cross-app tracking on the Android operating system in a way that is less stringent, of course, than Apple's solution. And obviously, this is a very private, internal, closed-door conversation which they've gotten access to. And Google is kind of well conscious about it as well. I think they have more than $100 billion in annual digital ad sales, and of course they have a vested interest in helping their clients and partners continue generating revenue by really targeting ads effectively to Android devices. That's why Android is free, my friend. And really it's also measuring the performance of these, right? And their spokesman had said in this piece, we're always looking for ways to work with developers to raise the bar on privacy while establishing a healthy ad-supported app ecosystem. Well, they do talk about an ad-supported app ecosystem. Of course, we know how the Google Play Store differs fundamentally from the Apple App Store in terms of the kinds of permissions they require, in terms of their reviews, in terms of, exactly how compatible they are with devices, and also in terms of a freemium approach and a paid premium approach, and just watching ads on the whole thing. But I think on the whole, Aman, to wrap this up, it is a positive for all of us as end users. It is a massive optimistic yes and a thumbs up from all of us tech enthusiasts. These are conversations that need to be had, because as we all continue to consume more data in countries like India, where the digital boom is happening, where Geo has put all of us on the digital map, I think it is imperative that these things are made clear, and we as users should be empowered with the information to make an informed decision. And I'd hope that people tune in to the Let's Tech About It podcast, where we try to break it down for you. And look, we're no privacy experts, and a lot of my shows I bring in privacy experts and lawyers, but I feel like sometimes, with due respect to their trade, in conversations like this where we have to reach all of you, and there's a huge audience of a lot of young, passionate tech aficionados, tech enthusiasts, and people who just want to hear what's happening. And this is more important, Aman. It's bigger than that. This is important for all of us who have a mobile phone and who have any sort of device and who don't live under a rock, because it is high time that we give that sort of option and empowerment to the user, so that the user decides what they want. So I think Apple's marketing game and Apple's positioning and branding on point. Let's hope
As
it's not a gimmick.
always.
Let's hope it's not a gimmick, because there are reports of people who haven't been getting the prompts. There are a lot of developers who haven't complied yet with this, and they are trying to persuade you within their apps to basically just evade this privacy feature altogether. So I hope Apple in a way has some guidelines to enforce that. I'm sure they do. I'm sure as it rolls out further it'll be great. But yeah, that's about all we have on this show, Aman. Did you enjoy talking about the privacy debate on this one? I hope it didn't get too geeky.
I think you said it right there, that this is a very important topic, and it's not just for tech enthusiasts and for tech lovers. I think even an average user needs to understand what's happening, because it's their information, it's your private information that is being sold. And I think they said it really well in an article that what's happened today is we've become a product that is being sold right between these giant tech companies. So I think Apple has done they've taken a stand, and as I mentioned before, I don't know what their sort of thinking behind it is, but the way they market it, it's perfect, right? They've said the power is back to the user. And the biggest thing that I think is going to be an outcome of this, because I know today there are people who will have Gmail accounts and use Google Chrome, but will not use the Google search app and download third party search engine apps. And because they're concerned about privacy. And I applaud that. And I say, yes, you're right. You can totally have that, that sort of scare, but then you're still using Gmail, you're still using Chrome, so it's not fully it's not fully helping you. So what Apple has done today, it basically gone out and challenged everyone else to take a stand at it. So whether let their hidden whatever their hidden motives are, at the end of the day, I think it's going to put pressure on all of these big guys to at least take a stand as to which side they're on. And basically it'll give the user that power to now decide where they stand and who they support, and ultimately it'll basically help in deciding which phone you want to buy, which ecosystem you want to buy. And I think that's important, to give that power back to the user. So it's been a really fun conversation. I think it's always fun. I used talking about tech with you, but I think this has been an important conversation. It's good that we could tell our very loyal listeners and viewers that this is what's going on, and you guys need to be aware of what exactly your rights are or what they're doing with your data. And now, thanks to Apple, you can choose. So on that note, please let us know what you think. We have our Instagrams linked below. I've also put it up on screen. And please keep on tuning in. And until then, Ayush, good night. It's really late actually this time out. We had to, we let it go on a bit too much maybe. But anyways, I'll let you go. Good night. And everyone out there, thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.